Today we're going to be ranking every legend from worst to best, but instead of an ordinary tier list which covers the legend's performance overall, for my tier list I want to focus on ranking the best solo legends to use in Apex Legends for Season 14. A good amount of players play Apex solo, so what better way to go over the most viable legends to use when it comes to the solo experience. Before we get into it, I do want to give a quick disclaimer. This list is based on my opinions and I'd love to hear your own lists down in the comments below. Feel free to have a healthy debate on why you think a specific legend should be ranked higher or lower in this list. With that said, let's dive into the F tier, or in other words, avoid solo queuing with. And the first legend in this list is going to be Wattson. Wattson as a solo player is definitely one of the most difficult legends to use, especially if soloing without any teammates. Her kit offers zero mobility and is mainly used to fend off enemies by locking down a building. So if you're caught out in the open with her, well, good luck. You can argue that her ultimate can be placed for some immediate portable cover, but can easily be destroyed, as well as having a pretty long cooldown duration. So rotating around with Wattson, it's crucial to always play off and around cover and pre-plan the next building to set up shop in. But let's say you are efficient with pre-planning on which building to hold next. Well, the fences are also a little lackluster, and just like her ultimate, are easily destroyable. Destroying 2 to 3 nodes of fences usually is enough to break through her defense. And let's not forget the amount of time wasted setting up. So if you're solo queuing, she's probably not the best pick for you. Moving on to the next legend in this tier, who is going to be Maggie. While yes, Maggie has recently received a buff with her ultimate being able to break through Gibraltar's dome, and her drill now having 2 cooldowns so you could attain them more often, it's simply not effective for the solo queuing experience. Yes, you can argue that her ultimate is great for mobility, to close distance, or perhaps escape a situation, but the issue here is that anyone is able to play off that same ultimate. So if you're trying to use it as an escape option, expect the enemies to continue chasing with the same speed boost. I will, however, shine some light on her movement when holding a shotgun. It gives the same movement speed as if you are running with your weapon holstered. This is one of Maggie's strongest points when it comes to solo queuing, especially with how strong the Peacekeeper is. But don't expect much outplay ability with Maggie unless you're extremely good with using shotguns. And finally, the last legend in this list is going to be Crypto. Just like the other legends in this list, Crypto lacks mobility and it takes a very skilled player to outplay enemies. For a solo queuing stance, he is not suitable. I will say that his drone is great for collecting banners and respawning teammates in a very quick manner, but his playstyle is mainly meant to be played with a full team in coordination. EMP pushing is his biggest strength, but that does in fact need to be timed with your teammates pushing together. Once an EMP push attempt fails, well, most times it's back to square one of collecting your teammates' banners with your drone while being a safe distance away. This usually results in Crypto having a more passive playstyle when it comes to solo queuing, and it makes it very hard to invest into fights and playing off of a knock. That is going to conclude the F tier and move us over on into the D tier. The first legend in this list is going to be Ashe. Upon this legend's release, everyone thought she was going to take over Wraith, but that's simply not the case. Ashe is another legend that I would try to avoid solo queuing with unless you prefer a more reserved playstyle. Ashe does have a little mobility on the other hand, but in the form of an ultimate rather than a tactical. So that means her cooldown on her portal is too long for it to be used in every fight. I've also noticed most players use Ashe's ultimate as an aggressive push rather than a defensive getaway. This becomes a big problem after finishing the fight and getting third-partied. Since you use your ultimate to push, then you have no escape or counterplay for the third party other than basic movement and gun skill. With a coordinated team, Ashe can definitely be viable, but for the solo queuing experience, I wouldn't recommend. Moving on to the next legend in this tier, who is going to be Gibraltar. While I love what his kit offers for his team play, it's just not made for solo players unless you play around teammates 24/7. His hitbox is simply way too large even with fortified to outplay enemies head on. Unless you are constantly abusing cover and using a shotgun, Gibraltar as a solo legend is very difficult to pull off, but not impossible. If you manage to pick up a knock before using your bubble, you can then use your bubble as cover while thirsting and go for a body swap to keep yourself healthy. But once a full team knows where you are and closes the distance by gathering multiple angles on you, it makes outplaying enemies very tough. Once again, another legend that's fantastic for team play, but for the solo queuing experience, I would shy away from. The next legend on this tier is going to be Newcastle. Another legend very similar to Gibraltar, but with a little more mobility. If I had a choice to solo queue between Gibby and Newcastle, I would say Newcastle all the way. His portable cover is great for outplaying enemies since it can be moved around, and his ultimate is actually useful for escaping situations. But once again, mobility in the form of an ultimate rather than a tactical, meaning it can only be used in certain fights but not all. So without abilities, his hitbox is very large, making you an easy shot. But what I will say is don't look past his tactical portable cover. Once you learn to use and control it effectively, Newcastle can become a big threat with close range weapons and jiggle peek. Moving on to the last legend in this tier, who is going to be Lifeline. She was once one of the best solo queuing legends, but as the seasons progressed, she was slowly nerfed and reworked into the ground. With her fast heals being removed, it makes Lifeline another basic movement and gun skill legend. I wouldn't look past her drone though. It tops off your health very quickly, so while we don't have fast heals for all consumables, using a battery while your drone healing you at the same time can get you to full health in no time. But you do need to be able to create some sort of distance for this to be remotely effective. This is why Lifeline is not suitable for the solo queuing experience. Once enemies know your location, it's tough to outplay them without an elite shot. But if you are a solo queue player that wants to run Lifeline for that specific support role, then she is a great pick, just like Newcastle and Gibraltar would be as well. Alrighty, Champion Squad, now let's move into the C tier, and the first legend in this tier is going to be Fuse. Now, I've recently just made a video about using Fuse while solo, and did a whole breakdown on how to effectively take advantage of his kit since he has no mobility. While I was able to find success when playing him, I still had a hard time outplaying enemies since I was focused on taking advantage of my positioning first during fights. Don't get me wrong though, Fuse is a fun legend to solo queue with since the amount of throwables you can carry is mind-blowing, alongside his knuckle cluster, which is on a 2x cycle. This means you constantly have throwables on hand to fend off and keep enemies at bay. This helps spare time when trying to heal and is always a great distraction. This is a big separation factor compared to the legends ranked lower than him. And let's not forget about his ultimate being so versatile and can be used in a defensive or offensive manner. The next legend in this tier is going to be Caustic. While his hitbox is still huge, his outplayability is still great. Gas canisters will always be a force, and I will always stand strong in saying that. Solo queuing with Caustic, with or without teammates, enemies will have a hard time of breaking through your defense, especially with how the gas gives move slow. Now, of course, staying on top of good trap placement and knowing when to use the gas bomb ultimate is essential. Once that is managed, Caustic can be a very lethal legend, especially when using close range weapons to decimate enemies quickly. The ultimate downfall to Caustic has to be when rotating out in the open. Having fortified helps, but the size of his hitbox will be recognized very fast, especially when you get cracked from miles away. Moving on to the next legend in this tier, who is going to be Rampart. Just like the Gibby and Newcastle debate, Caustic and Rampart also go hand in hand, in the fact that both shine great when in buildings. Now, Rampart is definitely a little more versatile when roaming out in the open, since the walls now take 100 damage to break before getting fully built. This makes it much easier to have portable cover when rotating. This also works great when trying to heal. Get a few walls set up and you're good to go. You can also remove walls with the top half broken to place another down to cover the same angle. In this regard, Rampart does have a leg up on Caustic when it comes to setting up cover in an open field. Enemy players will have to then waste crucial ammo to break these barriers before dishing out real damage on you. You can also play Rampart somewhat more aggressively with being able to fall back on past barrier placements. Next, let's move on to another legend in this tier, who is going to be Seer. While Seer doesn't have the mobility to be higher in this tier list, his kit does offer great counterplay when fighting enemies, especially when solo queuing. His tactical is perfect for playing off of the first knock by being able to cancel the res and still keeping a safe distance. You can also use the same strategy to cancel heals to obtain the first knock. Seer's ultimate is also a game changer on outgunning enemies, even if you might be lower on health and armor, since you can pre-aim the exact location you're getting pushed from. Seer still needs a more reserved playstyle to find success, but his abilities make for great outplaying options. The last legend in this tier is going to be Bloodhound. While they don't quite offer as much as Seer, Bloodhound's ultimate is the main game changer with the 30% movement speed. Typically, one ultimate accelerant will get your ult back or very close to it, so just make sure these are stored in your inventory. Beast of the Hunt ultimate not only offers near constant scanning ability, but the duration of it can be extended with every knock you obtain. So while working a fight in your ult, if you play your cards right, the ult should be able to last the entire fight, plus can extend into a third-party fight if things get very hectic and you're picking up knocks in a quick succession. That is going to conclude the C tier and bring us on into the B tier, where things get a little more exciting. This tier will feature legends a little more suitable for the solo queuing experience. The first legend in this tier will be Vantage, the newest legend for season 14, and I can confidently say they did a fantastic job with her kit. Apex Legends is always moving into a faster paced game, and Vantage is a prime example of it. Her tactical gives her a decent air boost that can be used in many ways, whether to obtain high ground, get out of a sticky situation, or to change up your angles. Although she has good movement, just be mindful when using this air boost, since you can sometimes get beamed out of the air depending on how good the enemy player is, as well as having a cooldown that does not show a proper timer. Other than that, Vantage can be fairly decent at playing her life, which is crucial when solo queuing. The next legend in this tier will be Mirage. The Bamboozler is stronger than most think, especially for solo soloing. Mirage is a great distraction with footstep sounds, since decoys can be very confusing at times. He is also great at avoiding damage when entering or disengaging fights by mimicking your own decoys. On top of all of that, his hitbox is fairly small and can revive teammates while invisible. So if you're solo queuing with teammates, this can be clutch in most situations. While still needing a slightly more passive playstyle, Mirage can be the aggressor when being on top of sending out decoys, so you aren't the center of the attention. This is what makes him an overall solid choice for solo queuing in Apex. Moving on to the last legend in this tier, who is going to be Revenant. Another legend with mobility, but I'd say a little more tactical style of mobility. Revenant can scale pretty much all buildings to gain high ground in unexpected ways. He's also great for grabbing angles quickly when playing around buildings. Although he is one of the least played legends, Revenant's kit can be quite useful to a skilled hand. His tactical ability to silence enemies also makes for great visual clutter, as well as preventing enemies from pushing since they don't want to get their ability silenced. The only thing I'd love to see from Revenant is perhaps a rework of his ultimate. This alone will not only jump him in this tier list, but also as an overall rating tier list. But since we're on the topic of solo queuing, B tier is suitable. His climbing ability is what mainly separates him from the rest, since he can play his life slightly easier than most legends we've previously mentioned. Alright Champion Squad, now it's time to get into the meat of the video. In these next two tiers, I would highly recommend any of these legends to use if you are predominantly a solo player in Apex Legends. Starting off in the A tier, and the first legend is going to be Wraith. She's been a staple legend pretty much through all seasons of Apex and continues to be. Wraith can play her life extremely well with her tactical phase, which can help her get out of nearly every situation. On top of which, you can use the portal then phase to activate it quicker if you truly need to get out of a situation instantly. When soloing, being able to play your life is arguably one of the most important aspects towards finding more success, so Wraith would be a solid choice. The next legend in this tier is going to be Bangalore. Her double time passive is the real game changer here alongside her smokes. This gives great movement speed to help you get out of sticky situations when needed. Plus her smokes paired with her digi-threat can make her lethal during most gunfights. Both of these can help her play her life extremely well, and not to mention her ultimate is the cherry on top, with being able to hold off teams from pushing if things go south. If you're looking for a new legend to play, if you're a solo warlord, well, Bangalore might just be the perfect fit for you. Moving on to the next legend in this tier, who is going to be Octane. While Octane currently has the highest pick rate, he is also a solid choice for playing solo. Octane Stim offers his kit lots of variety of playstyle, from stimming away to escape, or stimming into a player to finish them off. This lets Octane play his life extremely well to clutch up in man-down situations. His ability to create distance in a short period of time, then getting back into fights is what truly helps during the solo experience. His jump pad is also great for getting high ground if needed, which can be done with your whole team. Now let's get into the last legend in the A tier, who's going to be Pathfinder. While yes, his hitbox is the size of a fridge and he doesn't have the fastest cooldown on his grapple, Pathfinder is still one of the best legends at disengaging a fight, pushing into a fight, or obtaining high ground. Once the grapple is learned to be used correctly, Pathfinder can be a great legend for solo queue players. I do, however, want to mention that using his grapple should most times be saved when trying to gain high ground or to escape, only because of the cooldown. But if you're feeling yourself, you can always make some frisky plays. Now it's finally time to go over the 3 best solo queuing legends. First on the S tier is going to be Loba. Her kit offers the 2 most essential things for solo players: movement and loot. Her bracelet is extremely effective at gaining high ground, escaping fights, so mobility is always an option. Then her ultimate is great at finding the guns and attachments you need early on into the game to help you start dominating fights much quicker. Not to mention the batteries in your inventory are almost always being stacked, which is very beneficial for aggressive fighting and getting high kill games much easier. I started mating Loba in the beginning of this season, and all I can say is I wish I did it sooner. Moving on to the second legend in the S tier, who is going to be Valkyrie. And while all I can say is that she is hands down the best legend for obtaining any type of height. This alone lets you be able to pick apart and split up an entire enemy team much easier than any other legend. Of course, she did receive a nerf on the amount of fuel she can use before running out, as well as a height distance nerf on her ultimate. However, I can confidently say she is still extremely dominant with fighting around high ground obtainable areas. And finally, the last legend in the S tier is going to be Horizon. Another legend similar to Valk, but slightly more ground-based movement oriented. A good Horizon can break ankles left and right, and with her ability to avoid fall stun, her lifts make for great outplayability when fighting multiple enemies at once. On top of all of that, her ultimate is one of the best distractions to relieve a ton of pressure off a team. Carry a few arc stars, a good close range weapon loadout, and Horizon is capable of some dangerous things. Thank you guys for spending a couple minutes of your day with me. If you enjoyed today's video or found anything helpful, don't forget to leave a like rating. It is always appreciated. Lastly, leave a comment down below on who your favorite solo queuing legend is and why. I also highly recommend you guys check out this new solo series I have started on the channel, and what better way to start with learning how to solo queue with Horizon. With that said, I'll catch you guys in the next video.